This Corey LaJoie, Denny Hamlin online social media dispute has taken another ludicrous step forward. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Buckle your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We are diving deep into the saga that is Denny Hamlin, driver of the number 11 FedEx Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing, versus Corey LaJoie, driver of the number 32 Mustang for Go Fast. I did a video a week or two ago about the two drivers' ongoing Twitter beef that started during the Pro Invitational, carried over to Atlanta and Martinsville a couple of weeks ago. But yesterday, just as things seemed to be fizzling out for good, things took a scorching turn when Corey LaJoie went after Denny Hamlin on his podcast. He provided some crazy details regarding how serious their beef actually became, to the point that NASCAR had to get involved. And then this morning, Corey LaJoie actually tweeted out a long apology for the way he handled everything yesterday. But I don't want to jump too far ahead here. I want to make sure everyone is caught up on everything. I'm going to briefly recap some of the past Twitter beef, the Twitter drama between the two drivers, but then I'm going to focus on yesterday's episode of Sunday Money, Corey LaJoie's podcast. We're going to react to a lot of the things Corey LaJoie said during that show. We're going to talk about Denny Hamlin's brief response last night, and then Corey's apology this morning. Let's jump into it. This is going to be something. So, brief recap of why Corey LaJoie, Denny Hamlin have been kind of at each other the last few months. At first, it seemed pretty harmless, seemed kind of playful almost. During the Pro Invitational, if you recall, Corey LaJoie wasn't quick to jump onto the iRacing hype train. He kind of dismissed it. Denny Hamlin tweeted a response to him, saying in so many words, "Hey, we've always heard how bad your cars are. Maybe you should hop onto iRacing where it's an even playing field and we can actually see what you got." Corey LaJoie took that challenge up, and his first Pro Invitational race at Talladega, Corey actually finished second. And after that solid run, he was quick to kind of tag Denny Hamlin, kind of nudge him on that one, of course. Denny was quick to discredit it somewhat because, it is Talladega, but Corey LaJoie then ran pretty well in the remaining Pro Invitational races, so I think they were pretty even at that point. But things carried over into real life when, after Atlanta a few weeks back, that grueling race that saw several drivers need medical attention after the checkered flag, Corey LaJoie tweeted out his physical fitness stats, and it showed that he had a pretty high heart rate, burned almost 3,000 calories, and then Denny Hamlin, unprovoked, tweeted a reply to Corey LaJoie with his own physical fitness stats, saying, "This is why we could never count on you in the fourth quarter." And Hamlin's physical stats, he burned a lot less calories. His heart rate was lower for sure. Kind of a jab at Corey LaJoie's physical fitness. Of course, after that, the two went into a long and deep downward spiral, turned into an argument about car versus driver. Corey LaJoie drives for Go Fast Racing, which, let's be honest, is like a 25th place car most weeks. Denny Hamlin drives for Joe Gibbs Racing, which is a championship contending race car every year. Corey LaJoie saying in so many words, "Hey, if I was in a car like yours, I'd be contending for wins too. If you were in my car, you wouldn't be as relevant," that kind of thing. Denny Hamlin arguing that, hey, the driver plays a much bigger factor than a lot of you guys realize. Drivers are what help put a good race team over the top and actually help them get into victory lane. I think both drivers make good points. Obviously, Corey LaJoie would do better if he was in the 11 car because it's just a faster race car. But Denny Hamlin is also right because the driver does matter. We have seen not so great of drivers put into really good equipment and not get the result. So it's not all the car. Driver does matter. So Denny Hamlin and Corey LaJoie kind of have points, but that's where the debate went. That's where kind of the argument was set off. It ended, that last Twitter beef kind of ended sort of on a fiery note. Denny Hamlin replying to LaJoie saying, "Rooting for you, but you're still gonna have to work on your diet and hydration. That heart rate is out of control." LaJoie saying, "I've got enough people rooting for me. Save it, enjoy that flight back." And Denny Hamlin saying, "Save it, will do. Hopefully the poor me narrative works out for you." After Atlanta, things fizzled out. Of course, at Martinsville, a few days later, Corey LaJoie actually beat Denny Hamlin on the racetrack, one of the few instances where that 32 car was really set up and the 11 car was way off all day long. So Corey LaJoie got a nice top 20. Denny Hamlin finished a lap down in that race. And of course, fans took a hold of that one because they knew the rivalry that LaJoie and Hamlin had that week on social media, and to see LaJoie actually beat Denny Hamlin at one of Hamlin's better racetracks, I think got a lot of fans kind of riled up, had them picking sides, a lot of people kind of going after Hamlin, making fun of Hamlin, trashing Hamlin. People like to trash Denny Hamlin, and I think it really stems from the 2017 Martinsville incident when he wrecked Chase Elliott battling for the win. Some people were iffy on Hamlin before, but since that incident particularly, I feel like Denny Hamlin's general popularity in the NASCAR fanbase has dipped significantly and has never fully recovered. Anyway, in a nutshell, you're all caught up right there. So let's fast forward to yesterday, where Corey LaJoie went on his weekly podcast, Sunday Money, and this clip was shared all around social media all afternoon because about 10 minutes into the show, Corey LaJoie gave his own brief recap on the Hamlin-LaJoie dispute and went into detail on text messages that Denny Hamlin allegedly sent Corey LaJoie and many of the members of his Go Fast Racing team that basically threatened to wreck his car the next week. And it was such a threat that NASCAR actually got involved and reportedly had to sit down with the two drivers at Homestead, Miami the very next weekend. Let's watch some clips from yesterday's Sunday Money. I'll hit pause and give you guys my reaction to some of that because now the plot has become so dense that you would need a chainsaw to cut through this thing at this point.
The only personal thing I've said to him in this whole ordeal was the one thing about, yeah, he's probably going to win a Homestead because there's no pressure on the line. And, probably a dickhead thing to say. But look what happened. He ended up winning, which from my point of view, that was the only personal thing I said. Probably got a little wrapped up in fans, energy, whatever. He texted me on Friday night, congrats on getting your car crashed. Talking about he's going to wreck me on Sunday. Then he proceeds. So I
threat. That's a threat.
It's a premeditated threat, right? So I just hit the little like button on it like this. So then he proceeded. This was like 11:30 at night. Proceeded to text my car owner, Mason, the general manager, as well as my crew chief, and says, "Hey, congrats on getting your stuff crashed. Your driver's got to learn a hard lesson." Which
did he did that? He tweeted he texted all of those people.
Oh yeah, he was like full psycho mode.
I'm going to pause it right there for just a moment. So you heard that correctly. Corey LaJoie is alleging that Denny Hamlin sent both he as well as his team owner, his general manager of his team, his crew chief, sent them all threatening text messages, threatening to wreck the 32 car at Homestead Miami Speedway. And yeah, it's just a text message. It's not the same as like a schoolyard bully, like grabbing somebody by their shirt and like holding them up against the wall and like threatening to beat them for their lunch money. It's not quite the same thing as that. But hearing one of the stars of the sport, one of the drivers on one of the best teams, one of the most successful drivers in NASCAR today, hearing him text a threat to a Go Fast Racing driver. I'm sorry, but Go Fast Racing, like I said earlier, it's a 25th place team. Why is Denny Hamlin, who's a top 5 threat every week, why is he so caught up in this beef with Corey LaJoie and Go Fast that he would feel the need to do something like that? It just kind of reinforces the stereotype that Denny Hamlin kind of has thin skin and it's easy to get inside of his head. But anyway, that's just what Corey LaJoie alleges. We'll talk about Denny Hamlin's response here in just a minute. Let's go on with a little bit more from Sunday Money.
My owner's like, hey, that's not how this is going to work because this is a $300,000 race car for something that was just a Twitter beef that he started. So what do we like? Sends it stuff to O'Donnell, and O'Donnell's like, okay, well, like if you're gonna wreck the guy, don't just premeditate it because we already suspended Matt Kenseth for 2 races for wrecking Joe Logano on purpose. Now something's actually premeditated, so we're gonna have to hit it even harder. So do what you got to do. So now this thing has just went from a little Twitter beef to an actual. He's like threatening.
I'll pause it again right there. So yeah, Corey LaJoie says that his team owner then brought that text message to NASCAR, to Steve O'Donnell specifically, the vice president of competition. This is his area of expertise. This is his job. And with Steve O'Donnell seeing this evidence now, should Denny Hamlin wreck LaJoie on purpose, Steve O'Donnell has this hard evidence to look back to. And, LaJoie mentions Kenseth getting suspended for wrecking Logano. And that was, no proof that was necessarily premeditated. Obviously, we knew they had a history going back to Kansas, going back to Talladega, going back to earlier in that very race. But if Denny Hamlin were to wreck Corey LaJoie and NASCAR had these receipts, so to speak, to go back and look at, yeah, I think it's safe to say that penalty would be at least as significant, if not more significant, than what NASCAR gave Kenseth a few years ago. Anyway, I want to focus on this last part here where Corey LaJoie sort of goes into detail about an actual meeting that NASCAR set up between Corey LaJoie, Denny Hamlin, and kind of an intermediary at Homestead Miami Speedway.
I'm there 10 minutes early. He gets there about 2:08, a little late. We go over to a motorhome. There was some FUs back and forth, pretty tense at the beginning. And it was apparent who was going to have to.
You're glossing over this. You said FU?
Yeah, we were both kind of like, he just felt like I was attacking him. And I just had to, if I didn't remind him 7 times that he started this and kept subtweeting my stuff, he went from, well, it wasn't about you. You keep making it about your equipment. And I said, Dennis, you literally said the word YOU 9 times in the first 6 tweets to me. So, of course, it's about me. Don't say it's not about me. And then he wanted to kind of backtrack and say, well, it was only because I liked you is why I was messing with you. I don't mess with guys that I don't like. I was like, you don't say the shit that you did, nor text everybody on my team that you were going to crash me if you like me. They told him, if you're going to premeditate your decision on crashing this guy, we don't have any choice because we already have the evidence that you're going to do it. So he kind of softened his stance on that. And then I told him what I was taking offense to. And then there was some things that he took offense to, which weren't even textually accurate, because if he goes back and reads what I said, I never made any sort of jabs at his ability nor his character. Assume that I did. That's just why, like, he thinks everything is just about him, right?
So it is interesting. We're really only getting Corey LaJoie's full side of the story here, because Denny Hamlin doesn't have a podcast. He's not going out and having these huge conversations to kind of give his side of the whole thing. But just reacting to Corey LaJoie's side of their altercation, it certainly doesn't sound like these two guys are friends. I wasn't sure at first after the Pro Invitational back and forth, and even a little bit after the Atlanta back and forth. I was like, I think these guys are kind of just milking it a little bit for the attention. I think they're overall still on decent terms with one another. I don't think it's just gotten super personal yet. But, it's clear they didn't like each other a whole lot. But now I think it's obvious. They, even after that meeting, 100% do not see eye to eye. It just sounds like now maybe NASCAR has diffused it to the point where it will not carry over into any on-track altercations. As far as who made the issue about who and who made it about what, I mean, both drivers I think are a little bit guilty in this department. Definitely Denny Hamlin takes a lot of the tweets, a lot of things that are said to him a bit too personally. Perhaps he reads maybe more into some of the tweets and some of the comments than necessarily are actually there. But Corey LaJoie is known for shifting conversations into sort of a debate about equipment, because Corey LaJoie is very vocal about how bad his equipment is. It's kind of crazy, actually. Corey LaJoie is brutally honest about the capabilities and the handicaps of his Go Fast Racing team. He just straight up calls it like it is. He doesn't try to pretend each week that, oh, we're going to look for a good run today. No, he straight up says, oh yeah, we got a 29th place car, so we'll be lucky to finish top 30. Like that kind of thing. Like, he kind of is a little more critical of his race team than most drivers in his situation would be. And so Corey LaJoie often shifts the conversation to a conversation about equipment and, man, if I had a better car, I'd be doing better too, Denny. Like, Corey LaJoie shifts the conversation a bit, but so does Denny Hamlin. So I don't think either driver is innocent entirely in that department. But it sounds like that heated conversation would have been, I don't know, that would have been something. To be a fly on the wall in that motorhome during that debate, during that conversation would have been pretty remarkable, I'm sure. Anyway, after the clips from that podcast were kind of shared around social media all day yesterday, a lot of people reacting to them, Denny Hamlin didn't stay silent for long. He put out just a brief tweet in response to one of the reports. In response to a tweet about what was said in that podcast, Denny Hamlin tweeted, LOL, man, guys just can't help themselves. The above statement is false, by the way. Now, shortly thereafter, Jeff Gluck from The Athletic did confirm with NASCAR that they did hold a meeting at Homestead Miami Speedway between Corey LaJoie and Denny Hamlin to talk through their recent beef. But as of now, there is no confirmation that any sort of text messages, like Corey LaJoie initially alleges, were actually sent back and forth. We're not sure what perhaps Denny Hamlin texted them. We're not sure whether or not Denny Hamlin even did text Corey LaJoie or the team at Go Fast. We kind of just have to take both drivers at their word. Denny Hamlin is alleging that at least some, if not all of what Corey LaJoie said is false, even though it sounds like some of it's already been proven. Corey LaJoie is alleging that Denny Hamlin sent threatening text messages. Hamlin's denying that. We don't really have any 100% proof that Hamlin sent those text messages, that was why NASCAR sat them down, how far it actually escalated, what was said in that meeting itself. We only hear Corey LaJoie's abbreviated side of the story right there. So definitely a disagreement remains between the two drivers regarding how this whole situation played out. So it sucks for the two drivers involved at this point, I believe, but it's super interesting to fans like you and me who are just reading and watching this thing from afar, seeing how it plays out. It made Martinsville a couple weeks ago way more fun, knowing the history between these two drivers. In stage one, when Corey LaJoie and his masked face car got by Denny Hamlin in the first stage of the race, it was exciting. It made that pass mean a lot more than just a simple pass for 14th place. Now, Corey LaJoie put out an apology this morning, almost a day after that podcast aired, after it became viral. He put this out in a tweet. What started as me standing up for myself has escalated to a point it shouldn't have reached. Public exchanges got more personal and private matters made public. I got consumed by the opinions of fans as well as other competitors to fight a fight that was something more than mine. I want to hold myself to a higher level of character and integrity than what I've personally displayed the last couple weeks and have learned through it. I apologize for some of the things I've said towards Denny that were fueled by emotion and continue to recognize his exceptional ability to wheel a race car. There have been no lies spoken, but some things are better left unsaid. I'll always be a competitive person who sticks up for what I believe in, but I never want my platform to be one that provokes or spreads negativity. I appreciate all of the fans' support, and it's awesome to know that they have my back. Like Eric Church says, everybody sins and nobody wins in a fight. I wish Denny Hamlin and the 11 team good luck. I'm done with the distractions. I'm ready to focus on racing and leave this in the weeds. A pretty solid statement right there. I don't necessarily want to call it an apology. I think he's only apologizing even in that for some of the things he said. I think many of the things he said over the last couple weeks were completely fair. Testy perhaps, sure, but fair. I wouldn't say they were unfair game, But he does say in that statement that nothing he has said is false, so he stands by his comments, I suppose, that Denny Hamlin did text those threatening messages to him and his team. But he mentions it there that some things perhaps are better left unsaid. And that was kind of my reaction. When I went to bed last night, that was my reaction to this whole deal. You know, I was kind of on Corey LaJoie's side for a lot of this. I do think Denny Hamlin had a little bit too thin of skin early on, and he was clearly poking the bear, both in the iRacing incident and both in the post-Atlanta race incident. He was poking Corey LaJoie trying to get a reaction, and I thought Corey LaJoie's reaction for the most part was justified. But yesterday during his podcast, as entertaining as it was to listen to, the moment Corey LaJoie started, you know, sharing some of those private matters, like the meeting with him in NASCAR and Denny Hamlin, like the text messages that were allegedly sent, it got to the point where, you know, it felt like Corey LaJoie was now the one dramatically escalating the tension, dramatically escalating the drama. And it, you know, when he says things like he wants it all to kind of go away, he wants it to kind of dissipate at some point, that NASCAR is trying to be an intermediary here, it sounds like Corey LaJoie is completely going against all that when he shares these private matters, shares this private conversation, and shares it in such a way that makes Denny Hamlin look bad. I mean, nobody's going to listen to that podcast right there and think Denny Hamlin looks good after hearing that. Everyone who listens to those clips I just showed you is going to think less of Denny Hamlin because of the way Corey LaJoie talks about him and the things Corey LaJoie chooses to share and how he chooses to share them. So that doesn't sound to me like somebody who actually wants to diffuse the situation. It sounds like Corey LaJoie is still looking to get more cheap shots in at Denny Hamlin. And after hearing the podcast yesterday, I thought that was a little far. I thought there was a point there where, like LaJoie apologizes for, some things shouldn't have been said at that point. But Corey LaJoie puts that apology out there. I thought it was a good statement, a fair statement. We haven't heard from Denny Hamlin as of the time I'm filming and editing this thing, but I'm sure Denny Hamlin's probably feeling the same way at this point. I mean, I guess I don't know for sure because, you know, Corey LaJoie did air a lot of dirty laundry on that podcast. Denny Hamlin might feel like he needs to get even now. I don't know. It's a pretty wild situation. But now let's go ahead and talk about Corey LaJoie and Denny Hamlin, because at this point, I don't really think this looks good for either driver. So let me kind of recap the situation for each driver. We'll start with Corey LaJoie. Here's my reaction to Corey LaJoie. Corey LaJoie is a decent enough driver. I think he has a very strong, bold personality that NASCAR needs more of, but I do think he's embraced the underdog narrative perhaps a bit too much. His whole, you know, hashtag stacking pennies trend is really good. It's catchy. I mean, I have a t-shirt of it because I thought it was a cool idea. I like the idea that that's a team that needs to celebrate the small victories every week because that's the only way they're going to eventually become competitive. You know, Go Fast Racing isn't going to win races overnight. But like I mentioned earlier, the narrative around Corey LaJoie is that he's a little too self-pitying at times. Like, we understand he's not driving for the best team in the world, and they've had some races this year where kind of silly mechanical failures have ruined otherwise decent finishes. But Corey LaJoie, like I mentioned earlier, frequently badmouths his race team, frequently talks about how they just don't have fast race cars, consistently separates Go Fast Racing from the top teams in the sport. It's just the type of thing you don't hear from, you know, Daniel Suarez over there for Gaunt Brothers. You don't hear Daniel Suarez disparaging his team. You don't hear Bubba Wallace disparaging his team publicly to the extent Corey LaJoie does at all. You don't hear that from like Michael McDowell or Ryan Preece. You don't hear those guys disparaging their teams for giving him 25th place race cars. But Corey LaJoie, every week on his podcast, makes it clear that he's working with less. He has less to work with than guys like Denny Hamlin, than guys like, you know, Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick. He makes it clear every single week that he is not driving the best equipment. In fact, he's not even driving good equipment. Corey LaJoie makes that clear every single week. And it gets a little old at times. We don't want to hear about how bad your stuff is. We don't want to hear about how much you've had to overcome. We get it. But at the same time, you are a NASCAR Cup Series driver. Like, at some point, just go out there and drive what you got, man. Go out there and let the results speak for themselves. So I really like Corey LaJoie, but I do feel like and I don't really like the way Denny Hamlin phrases it, but the poor me narrative is a true thing around Corey LaJoie. That is a fact around Corey LaJoie, and it's sort of been the same thing for guys like Ross Chastain, who's had a lot of bad breaks. There's a little bit of a self-pitying narrative to it, but Chastain's had the results in the Truck Series. He's had some results in the Xfinity Series to speak up for that and kind of speak over the poor me narrative. Matt DiBenedetto, same thing. You know, after he lost his ride with Levine Family Racing last year, everyone was like, oh man, poor Matt DiBenedetto can't catch a break. He got a ride with, you know, Wood Brothers, a Penske affiliate, and he's running well this year, and I think now his results are speaking louder than the self-pitying. Corey LaJoie, the fact that he still drives for the 32 team for Go Fast Racing means that the results have not yet started to outshine the narrative. And the narrative around Corey LaJoie is pity Corey LaJoie because he is a better driver than his equipment, but he hasn't gotten the chance to show it. And that narrative does get old at some point. I like Corey LaJoie a lot, but I think he dwells on that narrative, he dwells on that storyline a bit too much. Now, maybe he's doing it right. Maybe he's doing things the right way, because we're talking about Corey LaJoie way more than we usually talk about a team that runs 25th every week. Corey LaJoie is in a contract year, and, you know, he sent that letter to Rick Hendrick so Mr. H would consider him for the 48 car. You know, Corey LaJoie runs great paint schemes every year. Corey LaJoie has been great at managing the public conversation around him and his brand. Like I said a minute ago, people talk about Corey LaJoie, a 25th, 28th place driver, way more than they do any other 28th place driver. At some point, the results on track are going to need to do most most of the talking. If he actually wants a better NASCAR Cup Series ride next year or the years after, if he really wants to build a long-term career, this whole, publicity is good for publicity's sake, whether no matter if it's good or bad publicity, that whole narrative is going to need to die out a little bit, in my opinion. But anyway, moving from Corey LaJoie to Denny Hamlin, like I mentioned earlier, this really just reinforces all of the kind of stereotypes we thought about Denny Hamlin already. The idea that he's too thin-skinned, that it's easy to get into his head, that he gets distracted too easily, and that's part of why he has maybe not lived up to expectations in the biggest moments and why he does not currently have a NASCAR Cup Series championship. This seems like just another pointed example of that. He has let a driver who has no wins in the Trucks, Xfinity, or Cup Series, a driver who is nowhere close to playoff contention at the moment, he's let that driver get into his head, get under his skin the last few weeks, the last few months, if you go back to iRacing. Maybe it was supposed to just be, friendly jabs at each other at the beginning, but it's obviously spiraled into something more than that. But one thing that Corey LaJoie is right about when he says this is that in their most recent Twitter spats, Denny Hamlin has started it. Remember back to the Pro Invitational, Corey LaJoie was just kind of tweeting to nobody, or tweeting to his following that I'm not really into iRacing. Denny Hamlin took it upon his shoulders to try and, challenge Corey LaJoie and try to kind of bait him into joining their series and racing and all that. And then later when Corey LaJoie posted his stats, his heart rate stats and everything from Atlanta, he didn't tag Denny Hamlin. That wasn't pointed at Denny Hamlin at all. In fact, it was a sponsor plug, if nothing else. Denny Hamlin went out of his way to make the conversation, to jump into the conversation and get involved and turn it into something more. So Denny Hamlin, Corey LaJoie is right. Denny Hamlin started it in both of those cases. And if the text message thing is true as well, Denny Hamlin also took things the furthest and escalated things the most dramatically in this altercation as well. But once again, like I said, this just reinforces the narrative around Denny Hamlin that he doesn't have the mental toughness to be a consistent championship threat. That might be why he has not yet won a NASCAR Cup Series championship. Many people consider Denny Hamlin as possibly the best NASCAR driver ever to not win a Cup Series title. There is real statistical evidence that might be the case. He's at least in that conversation. So the fact that that guy who has sponsorship from FedEx, who's had basically a lifetime of sponsorship from FedEx since he got to the Cup Series, he has the support of Joe Gibbs, one of the most powerful team owners in NASCAR. Why is that guy so worried about what Corey LaJoie is saying to him on Twitter? Why does Denny Hamlin feel the need to jump into those arguments and those disagreements so frequently and take things so personally? It just once again reinforces the idea that Denny Hamlin maybe doesn't have the mental toughness that other drivers have, that, the killer instinct that people say you need to win championships in professional sports. Denny Hamlin, he's just prone to distractions is what it looks like. And can't say that's a bad thing or a good thing. It just definitely is something that has kind of been said about Denny Hamlin for many years, that situations like this, examples like this, kind of help prove that. But anyway, that's all I have to say. Once again, I think at this point, neither driver looks particularly good in this situation. I think Corey LaJoie needs to focus on building his brand away from needless drama like this. If he wants to stay in NASCAR long term, he needs to focus on getting results on the track and continuing to just be a strong personality, but also an inviting personality, not one that's involved in petty disagreements with other drivers, week in, week out. And Denny Hamlin, same thing. He's already a NASCAR Hall of Famer, in my opinion. 3 Daytona 500s, 40 Cup wins. He's a Hall of Famer. But if he really wants to cement his legacy, he needs to win a Cup Series championship. So any distraction that gets him away from that goal, which that's exactly what this is bad. So Denny Hamlin needs to focus on his goals, focus on people that are, no offense to Corey LaJoie, but he needs to focus on competition that is in his league currently, other cars that are fast as that 11 car. He needs to focus his attention out front, because this year, the way they've run this year, he has a real shot at winning a championship, and he cannot let that slip away. So I think both drivers right now are not in a great place regarding this whole dispute, but it is fun for the fans. It is 100% fun for the fans, but that's all I've got. Let me know what you guys think. Are you on Team LaJoie, Team Hamlin? Do you think both drivers are silly? Do you think both drivers are in the right? Let me know what you think of this whole dispute. Do you think this dispute will continue? It sounds like NASCAR's tried to defuse the situation. It now sounds like maybe Corey LaJoie, after a day of escalating it, maybe now Corey LaJoie is starting to defuse the situation as well. We'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. But thank you all for watching this episode. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, subscribe if you are new. We talk about NASCAR almost every single day on this channel, all the trends, all the hot topics from around America's favorite motorsports. So subscribe if you are here for more of that. And of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. I couldn't keep uploading daily without the support I get from each and every single one of you on Patreon. So I really appreciate your support of the show. If you want to support Out of the Groove as well, check out that top link down in the description. I greatly appreciate it, you guys. Talladega is right around the corner. I might have another video up between now and Sunday, but if not, I'll see you guys after the Cup race Sunday afternoon. Should be a lot of fun. You got ARCA returning on Saturday as well. That's going to be exciting. So I'll see you guys then. Thank you all for watching this video. Take care, y'all. See you after this weekend.